and then you've just got a little thing come up. So if you just click continue on that, if you're happy to do so. So just to give you a bit of an outline of the session, I've got to put a really huge disclaimer out there to start with, in that we've not done this before, particularly with this level of interaction that we've got planned for the session. So the timings are indicative, but hopefully this gives you an idea of how the session will work. So I'm going to kick off with giving you a bit of an introduction to the People and Culture Project and what we mean when we say the positive working environment. So we'll talk that through in a little bit of detail. I'll set the scene for your group discussions, and then you're magically going to be whisked away into these small groups, which Aisha will facilitate for us. And you'll discuss some of the themes that we've set out for about 45 minutes in your groups. We'll then have a quick screen break, and then we'll come back together to share some of the key themes that have come out of the discussion and talk about the next steps around this piece of work. As I said, this is the first time that we've tried this. So what we'll be keen to hear at the end is any feedback that you've got. And we've got a poll via Zoom that we will provide you a link to, just so that you can capture that feedback. We're really keen to learn before we do the next one, which I think is on Friday this week. So in terms of the aims of the session, the slide sets out what we're hoping to do, and hopefully this is in line with what you're expecting. I just wanted to give a bit more context around that, really. I think just to say you've all been doing an absolutely amazing job in everything that we've had to contend with over the last few months. And not only that, achieve so much at the same time. So much has changed about how we work and what we've been expected to do. And everyone has really rose to that challenge. You know, particularly when you think about colleagues juggling their home life, whatever that might be like, with the work and doing that so effectively. That is really amazing. I think what I'm interested in now is what it's been that's meant that that's been possible. What's kept us motivated throughout this period. What kind of support have you valued, be that from your manager or from your peers or both? What is it that's kept you going? And I think another important thing to think about is because we haven't been on campus, have you not had to do that's meant actually you felt a little bit more like you're in control of your work-life balance? So for me, certainly not having to contend with a cross-city line every day, I think is absolutely amazing, not climbing onto that train. So really keen to hear really your reflections on what it's been like, but particularly that bit about how we've been working rather than what we've been doing. And I think these reflections are going to be really critical in shaping what we do as a college going forward. I think also to say we don't know what returning to campus is going to look like yet. The majority of buildings are still closed, but there's plans, of course, to ramp up opening of the buildings as we start to move towards the new academic year. I think one thing we do know for certain is that we're not all going to be descending onto campus on a particular date in September and we're all going to be back and it's all going to be normal. It's going to be very much a phased process. So we'll have to phase back and obviously consider the latest government guidelines as we do that, as we begin to get closer to September. I think what I'm trying to say is at this stage, there's very few answers to some of the questions that you might have got, and things are really uncertain. But this session is probably a first opportunity to help shape what we do as a college as we plan our return and the longer term implications for ways of working, and particularly how flexible we're able to be in terms of how people work. If you've got any questions as we're going along, please enter them into the chat box in the first instance. We've not factored in time for a question and answer session as part of this, but if there is time at the end, I'll endeavour to answer what I can. If we don't have time, I'll gather the questions from each of the sessions and just make sure that we feed back to all attendees on anything that's particularly pertinent, or certainly refer them to someone who can answer, depending on what the questions are. So this diagram aims to set out what we mean by the positive working environment and the People and Culture project that we're working on currently. So last summer, College Board, in conjunction with our HR business partner, did some work in setting out a vision really for what they wanted the culture of the college to be like. There was some quite broad consultation on that at the time, and you may have seen a document, you may have commented on it, you might not have, but a lot of people did get a chance to input, feedback was collected. But clearly an awful lot has happened, has happened since then. And I think a lot of assumptions were made at the time that that document was written based on the fact that we all worked on campus and that's where we worked and where we would forever work, and that all teaching and research happened there too. So of course things have moved on in that sense, in that we know that we don't always work on campus and that can work fine. One of the main pieces of feedback at the time that the document was drafted was that there was nothing contentious in there. It was all about creating a fair, respectful and collegiate culture. And I don't think anyone would disagree that that's the right thing to have, and probably largely what we've already got anyway. I think the thing that people did challenge back on is that's all great, but how do we make that a reality actually in practice? I think we're lucky to work in a college that does, it does have these principles, and I think they do shine through in a lot of the things that we do. But also I recognise that it's not always perfect and there are things that we perhaps need to improve. So the diagram as it's shown sets out 4 strands of activity that we're looking to do as part of the People and Culture project. So I'll go through each one in turn. The first one being the ensuring fair and consistent policy and practice, in the purple strand at the top. So I think critical to a positive environment is a motivated and engaged group of staff. And obviously one of the things that we can do really quickly to demotivate people is that they feel that they're not being treated fairly, that such and such has had a different experience of a process, which is set out, that should be applied to everyone. So we're going to look at a whole raft of processes, but we're going to start at the start really with induction. Now that's with a massive caveat that we know that we're not going to be recruiting loads and loads of new staff over the next year, but actually there's still value in the piece of work on induction, particularly as we're thinking about going back to campus. We may actually need to do some kind of re-induction for people, and of course we will still be doing some recruitment, and there'll be some internal moves, so induction is still going to be really crucial. So we've kicked off some small project teams to look at that. We're still looking for people to be involved in that work. So if that's something that you hear and think I'd be interested in inputting into, do let me know and we can factor you into that. It's not started properly yet, so there's plenty of opportunity to shape that. We're going to really look at induction happens, and it happens quite well across the college. But there are some groups of staff that we think we could probably do more for. And an example of that is, of course, people returning from a long-term absence. So those coming back from parental leave, perhaps having had some people with a long-term sickness coming back. So there's some categories really, rather than just the basic induction. We know that exists and the materials are there, but we want to build on that and make sure the good practice is shared across the college. The second strand is about recognising and valuing people's contributions. So we're looking at the diamond scheme as it stands, which is the reward and recognition scheme for professional services colleagues across the college. And it links very much into the green section on the diagram around sharing and embedding a core set of values. The two go hand in hand. We want to be recognising based on our values. So it's key really that in any of this people feel valued, and particularly at the moment when things are so tough, we want to be thinking creatively and flexibly about how we do that, and perhaps not have a one-size-fits-all approach to that kind of reward and recognition. The third strand in grey is about supporting each other to do our best work. So this aspect is really about ensuring that what we offer to staff and to potential new staff when they're looking to join the organisation is really clear. So that's both about helping you thrive in your current role, but also to prepare if you are looking for the next opportunity, to help you do that in the most effective way possible. There's already so much good stuff around the college, all the wellbeing initiatives that are underway, the mental health first aid offer, all the great stuff that Pod do, Birmingham Professional, both at the college and university level. But there's still more that we could do, and Aisha in particular is looking at a potential mentoring scheme to complement what's offered by the Pod Coaching Academy. So there's still lots of stuff to do. And again, you know, if these are things that sound interesting to you, a chance to help us shape these pieces of work. And finally, as I've mentioned it earlier, we've got the piece around sharing and embedding a core set of values. So this isn't about coming up with something brand new. We've already got the expectations framework for professional services staff, but early feedback suggests that actually that's not perhaps as embedded as we might like it to be. And there are just so many different frameworks out there, you know, alongside the expectations framework. We've got the varying competencies frameworks for support and academic related staff. We've got the university level values. We've got different areas with different values. So we want to look across that really, and in conjunction with what comes out of these sessions, think about what are we saying actually are really what we want to say are our values, and how then does that tie into that reward and recognition piece. And again, how do we get all this embedded through everything that we do? So there's a lot to do, and I've referred to it as a project because we've got to have some kind of a light at the end of the tunnel. But it really is an ongoing and an iterative piece of work, and it's all of our responsibilities to create this positive working environment. So I'm trying to create as many opportunities for people to get involved, but I think day to day, you know, these principles are things that we should be trying to live by, and it'll be a continued effort for all of us. So in a few minutes, it's going to be over to you to take forward the to keep doing, and one thing to stop doing from each group. David, because you're would you mind going first with the reflections from your group?
Yeah, no problem at all. So we had a really interesting discussion that ranged across a few different themes. And I think the key takeaway points that I would highlight here in terms of keep doing, we had a few people who are in teams that are not always based in the same location. And we've really enjoyed having regular, sometimes daily team meetings, whether that's a huddle or a whip kind of work-based meeting or something a bit more informal. But we were, I think, all of us of the view that more social and pseudo-social activities within teams have been a real positive of the recent working period. So that's definitely something people want to keep doing, as well as having more regular kind of work in progress catch-ups as well. And in terms of things that we want to stop doing, I hope you don't mind me singling out, but Jess, you made a really, really interesting point that I think everyone got behind about being a little bit bolder in terms of our communications, in terms of our expectations, and making fewer assumptions when we communicate. Sort of thinking a little bit more about who we're communicating with and what we're saying, and we might be surprised what we get back. So I think that's a really positive thing to take out of this period, and something that we could learn a lot from across the institution.
And it's a really good point, I think, in that if you think back a few months, say last Christmas, we would have made a assumption that so many people couldn't possibly work from home, and yet look what we were actually able to achieve because we were forced to do that. So I think this whole situation, if there is one real positive, it has forced us to challenge a lot of those things that we would normally just treat as that's gospel, that's how it's always been. We've had to do things differently. So I think that's such a good point. Thank you. Kelly, how did your group get in? I don't know whether you're going to be the person feeding back or whether you'd agreed for someone else to.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I can feed back. It was really good, actually. Yeah, we had some really good discussions. In terms of the thing that we were going to stop doing, we thought that maybe the sort of inconsistencies among different grades of staff, where maybe higher grade staff used to be able to sort of work from home more often anyway, whereas lower grade staff maybe not so much. So maybe stopping that inconsistency now that we know that kind of everybody is capable of working from home, and opening that kind of up to all staff really. And in terms of the thing that we wanted to keep doing, it was really about keeping that flexibility going forwards, and maybe obviously role dependent, but if you haven't got any meetings in the diary and you've got a big project or something to work on and you find that kind of quiet space at home, you know, a good place to do that, then being able to email your line manager and say, oh, is it okay if I work from home today, sort of thing, and just keeping that flexibility really going forward.
I think they're good points that go hand in hand. And again, with the assumptions point that we'd always have thought, well, certain grades of staff can't work from home, we can't supply them with a laptop.
Yeah.
Those things have been naturally challenged by that. And I'd certainly hope that flexibility is something that we can keep to a much greater extent than what we've had before. Thank you. Who else was in your group facilitating? So I don't, Janine,
yeah.
Mandy, how about your group?
Hello everyone. So the one good thing we discussed about keeping would be not having to ask for permission to work from home, but it being more of a choice. And we just discussed that around, like, for example, the impact of that would be good on those, well, work-life balance, mental well-being, etc. So if, you know, one day you can't come in, or you just think actually it'd be easier for me to work from home, you have that as a choice. And that goes hand in hand with one thing to stop, which we focused on around commuting, because it takes too much time out of people's days. So for example, for one of us it's 10 hours, for the other one approximately 15 a week. So, you know, is it worthwhile? Because they could take that time and input more than they would if they were commuting. But having a choice and a balance of coming into the office and working from home is key.
Thank you. They're good observations. Aisha, were there any other groups that I've missed?
Yeah, that's it now.
Lovely. Thank you. I think they're all great reflections, and I think certainly the group that I sat within, it was really good to hear so many positives actually that have come out of this. You're never quite sure with these kind of sessions what sort of feedback you're going to get, but it was resoundingly positive, and so many really good lessons learned to feed into whatever comes next. So thank you again for your time and for your positivity and being able to get so much done in such a tough situation. I'm just trying to get these slides to move on. So in terms of next steps, as I said at the start, we will be collating the responses across all 3 sessions. I've got pages of notes from the discussion today, so we're going to have absolutely stacks of feedback to get through. I think if you're the kind of person like me who sometimes you just need a bit of time to think about things and some of the things that you've heard today, that's absolutely fine. I'd say have a think and send through some more thoughts to myself or to Aisha or any of the facilitators, and we'll feed that into our conversation after the 3 sessions have taken place. As I said at the start, I think we'll also do something virtually as well. So if anyone hasn't been able to attend these sessions, recognising that people have just come out, you know, particularly on the learning and teaching side, have come out of quite an horrific period of time. I think we will put something out like a Padlet, which will allow people to comment on some of the key themes that have come through, so there's as much broad engagement on this as possible. It's not like we've got to get this done overnight. We've got some time to reflect and get as much input as possible, which is really great. We'll present an update, so that the main place that these kind of things go to is the College Professional Services Senior Management Team, which Lorraine Gayton chairs. So we'll present back to them when we've got something ready with some proposals for what we'd like to do next. And of course, you know, as I said at the start, we've recorded some of the content of this session. So we'll put updates on the page where that goes, so that you can see the updates. And I think, again, just to prompt, if you are interested in being involved in any of the work in any greater detail, there'll be plenty of opportunities, not just now, but on an ongoing basis throughout. So no pressure now if you've got lots going on, but bear it in mind for future, and don't hesitate to get in touch if it's something that you're interested in. So we'll just make sure that we haven't had any particular questions. No, I think just the point that someone had raised about not being able to see the diagram. We'll send the slides around as well, so you've got them to